I just wanted to kind of pick a little bit of your brain. Like, what do you feel were the key kind of ways of thinking that got you from being that non-Muslim schoolboy to being, the chairman of our era today? Like, what's the key kind of
Yeah, I
things?
think the main thing really is existential angst or
Okay.
ontological anxiety.
You sound like Hamza now.
Yeah, the big words for basically like what are we here for? What's the purpose of life? What's it all for? It's that fundamental question that really drove me. It really was wanting to know what is the purpose of life. And I think the fact that I was in that monastic boarding school and the fact that I really didn't like it, I wasn't comfortable there. I didn't like it. I didn't really understand what it was about. And I think that allowed me to ask those questions in a more deep way. It sounds like a poor little rich boy story. And, my wife always, not always, but quite often makes fun of me, like my wealthy background, right? Her being maybe on the polar opposite, right? Wealthy white privilege, yeah.
Yeah.
And her is sort of like, working class Pakistani, it's hard to explain to people how messed up rich people actually can be. And it's sort of sad. I feel sorry for people because people think that money is a solution to everything, and it really isn't. And that's what you begin to realize. See, that's what I realized. I guess I realized that money wasn't going to make me happy. It wasn't making me really happy, not in a profound sense. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I could buy the booze and have the girls and have nice holidays and take the drugs, but it was all artificial. Deep down inside, it was like, this can't be what life is about. I didn't believe it was anyway. So it was that, I think that just drove me, just wanting to find the answer, and not any answer. I wanted an answer that ultimately made sense and that was going to satisfy me and that I could feel sure that it really was, that there was a truth out there. Yeah, and that's what drove me to look through different religions and everything, philosophy, psychology, politics, whatever, different things.
Yeah, mashallah.
Uh,
So, like,
yeah.
I mean, one thing is looking for it, right? And naturally, like you said, the fitrahs there, human beings are going to have that kind of desire to find out more about their purpose and everything. But, today with the kind of PR that Islam's got, to actually
Yeah.
find it and then
Well,
realize,
yeah, you see, the thing is, bro, is that you being little bit younger than me, Islam didn't have a much better PR then, to be honest,
mm,
because so when I was at that stage of asking those questions, it was about the same time when the Iranian Revolution had kicked off.
okay, I don't remember
Uh,
that, but yeah,
yeah,
cool.
so
What year
it's
was this? Like 80s or
getting a
90s?
really bad press then as well, right? And especially when it was beginning to look like pretty much like the French Revolution. I mean, they were executing people,
Mm.
anyone who was connected with the former regime. They were getting executed, being shot, and so on and so forth. So, like, then there was, the whole rhetoric from Iran about no East, no West, Islam is the best. America was the big shaitan. So, like there was a lot of hatred being in the media towards Islam and Muslims generally,
Mm.
not just Iran, Margaret Thatcher, when she was in power, had already then identified Islam as the new enemy, as
Mm.
Russia was no longer the enemy. Who are we going to direct our missiles to? Oh, we're going to direct it to North America. We're going to direct it to the Middle East to protect us from this growing threat of Islam. It's almost as if they had, in a very Orwellian way, decided already that where the new threat was, at least we always have to have some threat from somewhere.
Mm.
So yeah, no, I think it's, yeah, I was still brought up in a time where Islam did not have a good press at all.
So how do you find the courage in a situation like that where you've been looking because like Buddhism seems nice and all these other things seem nice, and then you end up and you get to Islam and then you realize that, oh my God, I think this might be the truth. Like, what is it that
Yeah, I
pushes
didn't
you
think
through?
it. You see, there's the difference. When I read the Quran, I read a translation of the Quran. I didn't think. It was like I knew that was it. Like, I mean, like, wow. I mean, maybe we take it for granted as Muslims, but like to come across a book that you feel sure is from God, right?
Mm.
Like, this is the creator of the earth has sent us a message. You got to take that seriously. Like, that's just a big wow moment. If you think about it just for a little bit, the creator of the entire universe has actually sent a message to us, right? So, like, that itself creates a paradigm, mind shift. It's a shift in your whole way of thinking, and then it's like, well, everything else almost becomes irrelevant, you know.
Mm.
So for me, the challenge was not honestly accepting the truth.
Okay.
Like, intellectually, it was not a problem for me. My real problem was overcoming my nafs. It was overcoming my bad habits. Really, that's what it was. It was 20 years of 19 years of terrible habits, of living a certain way of life that was ingrained in me. And I guess until today, in some ways, I'm probably still struggling with that. It's really, really difficult. I mean, it's interesting from the point of view of psychology, is that, from neuroscience, they believe that, you see, when you do any certain action or you have any thought pattern, it forms what they call neural pathways. So your brain forms pathways, and that's what creates habits. And actually, they're very, very useful because it makes us, complex things become quite easy to do. We start to do them almost instinctively. But the problem is, if we realize those habits are bad and then we want to change them, right? They say those neural pathways never go. They actually
Mm.
never go away. They stay there in your brain. But what you have to do is build new habits on top. You have to build stronger neural pathways to overcome those habits. But those habits, it's the pathways are still there, right? So it's quite easy to just suddenly, when you don't even know it, you slip back into that old way of being. So it's quite a challenge. Changing yourself is the real challenge. I generally don't think that people. It's not difficult to know that Islam is the truth. The real challenge is to actually change yourself. And I think some people get that straight away. They get it that, when even to the stage when, if they realize if they're going to admit there's a God, even, right? So for many atheists, even the stage of admitting that there is a God is a problem for them, because they've already predicted what is going to come from that, right? If I admit that there's a God,
Mm.
right, then I'm going to have to admit that there's a purpose to life. And if there's a purpose to life, it's going to make sense that God must have sent some sort of guidance. And then
Yeah.
I'm not free to do what I want. I'm going to have to change my way. So it's easier for some people just to be in denial from the very, very beginning, right?
Mm.
But for me, I don't know. It was easy for me to admit that it was true. What wasn't easy was changing my life. And I guess that's why in our era, supporting new Muslims is really, really important, because, we realize that it's not hard to take Shahada. It's hard to maintain what Islam demands of you. That's the tough and challenging bit, in my opinion. You know.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting because something you said there, it jolted me a little bit because I thought it's true. Like when you grow up as a Muslim, you have the law of familiarity, you take it for granted, you know from the beginning of your consciousness that Allah sent the Quran.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't have that beginning and you're just like going through life and then suddenly like you realize that Allah did send you something, like
Yeah.
how would you actually read that book for the first time knowing that it was there? So I think it's very interesting, like the non-Muslim perspective to becoming a Muslim.